even if we can agree that Chance fell and that that's where he met his untimely end, how do we know it was an accident? How do we know he was alone? There's a lot of things about this situation that are unanswered and unproven. Sure, maybe it was an accident. Maybe he fell, maybe he went out there for some really crazy reason all by himself in the middle of a rainstorm with no flashlight and no phone, not dressed for it, in a silly direction to be walking. Okay, fine. Maybe we can buy all that. And he accidentally climbed up this thing and fell. Okay, prove it. And I think we're all good here, and I think the family feels the same way. If you can prove that, you can prove that whole chain of events. Okay. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. I'm Myles Reiff. I'm here as always with my buddy Sean Cahill. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. Guys, today we're getting into another comment reaction video. I have to say, the number of views and reactions and comments that we've gotten in the last week has been really amazing. Thank you, everybody, for engaging so much. As we said last week, we kind of hit a little bit of a shadow banning thing because of one of the cases that we covered in the subject matter. And it feels like we've come back strong and that you guys are all there supporting us and seeing our videos. So it's really good to know that when we're being pushed by YouTube, you guys are seeing it and that people are reacting to it. It's really, really nice to see. Obviously, the news that's come out about the identification on Chance Englebert's remains has garnered a lot of commentary, a lot of conversation, both on our YouTube comments, on the reels that we've put up on Facebook, the reels that we've put up on Instagram. We have tons and tons of reactions from people in numbering in the hundreds, thousands and thousands of view hours. So we're going to try to cover as much of that as we can in this vid. I think, Sean did an amazing job of kind of going through these comments earlier this morning and picking out stuff that sort of represents the topics that people are hitting on. Because as I said, there's so many reactions that we've gotten. There's obviously no way that we can speak to every one of them here. We will go in and sort of write replies to the comments this week as we have time to actually, talk to you guys, within the comments. But I think right now, we just want to get something out on Monday and sort of let you guys know that we're reading what you're saying and we're trying to keep the conversation going. Just so you guys know, we have spoken to Ryan Couch, the Engelbert private investigator, Dawn's private investigator, we should say, Dawn's family's private investigator, and we're hoping to speak with him on the phone tomorrow, which will be the day that this is going up. And I can't say whether Ryan or Dawn are going to be ready to get on camera with us at this point, but whatever news there is that's official and that they want to share, whether it's coming directly from them or we'll pass it on to you guys, we will absolutely do that. Sean, anything else channel business wise before we get into these comments?
No, I think the big thing is just once again letting you guys know we're also a podcast now. So if you haven't heard the news or you just haven't gotten around to it, this is your reminder. Go to wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple or Spotify or Amazon Music, and look up True Crime Unsolved. We are also there. It's the same show as this. It's just audio. So if you're into that, check it out. Other than that, like Miles said, we've got some great comments to read. You guys had so many thoughts on the Chance Englebert news and also on the Missy Bevers case, which we just posted the breakdown for. So we're going to kind of take this in two parts. I think, what do you want to start with, Chance, maybe Miles, and then after that we'll go to Missy and
I
call it a
think
day.
that sounds like a good idea. Anna Shaney Felt 4709 says, I wish his phone would be found because I think the data would answer families' questions. Personally, I think he headed north and wanted to get away from the road due to the storm. Being 25, he may feel invincible. He was an athletic young man, and perhaps he felt confident and had some liquid courage. May God bless him and his loved ones. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing here that's easy to agree with is we wish his phone was found too. I think the phone would answer a lot of questions. There's more comments about the phone, and I have more to say about it, but I think maybe let's wait till we get to those. Um, because it does seem like, in this day and age, so many of mysteries are solved by somebody's phone telling you exactly where they were, who they called, what they were thinking. You know what I mean? Like the phone is a big deal. So I'm actually not sure if they found the phone. If they have, that news hasn't been released explicitly. We know that some belongings of Chance's were found with the remains, but what that means, I've never heard it said that it was the phone officially. So yeah.
I've never seen, speaking of that, I've never seen any official account of what the remains were. I've seen a lot of speculation. I've seen people speaking as if they had direct knowledge of what was found.
In our comment
But
section,
in our
especially.
comments section and in
Yeah.
other comments online on other videos and articles, but I've never seen an official statement of what was found. Scott Coker, DV4YH. No effing way it was an accident, and why wasn't Chance found in the search? Scott, I think you obviously mean the original search, the multiple searches that took place after Chance went missing, uh, many of which, by all accounts, included going out towards the monument. So, yeah, it's a great question.
Well, it
Great
speaks to what
question.
I was just saying, right? It's like there's so many unanswered questions here that I understand that, the press release and all the different agencies and that they think that the injuries look like a fall, although it could be something else. But there's so much other stuff, right? So why wasn't he found before this? Why was he up there to begin with? None of that makes sense. And people aren't buying it. I mean, just looking at our comments on this video, everybody's saying some version of what Scott here said. No fucking way it was an accident,
It's like
right?
a 500 to 1 ratio.
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, there are people, and we'll read a few, who, kind of are taking what the authorities are saying and saying, okay, let's move on. But I'd say that that's a very small minority of the reactions to this news.
sure. And look, if it was an accident and Chance hiked up there in the dark on his own and fell, okay, prove that, right? You should have to prove that before we're just going to buy it. I understand that he has injuries that look like a fall. I understand that his remains were found in a place that you could fall to, but him being up there still makes no sense. And there's a lot to answer for there, right? And I think everybody who knows more than 5 minutes worth of information about this case has those same questions. I know I do. I know his mother, Dawn, does. I know Ryan, the private investigator, does. And like we said, one look at our comment section says most of you feel that way too. So if I'm the law enforcement looking into this or the state attorney, I would feel like the public obviously has more questions here. And before I wanted to close this case, I would do my best to answer that. But it doesn't seem like that's what's happening here. It seems like we have some injuries that may or may not be a fall. Sure, it looks like it could be, but it could be something else. And we're done, right? Move on, everybody. And I just think, for my personal taste, I don't know. The public's not happy with that. The family's not happy with that. If you really think that that's what happened, please tell us why. Why do you think he went up there? Do you have proof that he put himself there? Or is it just simply that the remains were found there later, years later, right? So, yeah. Barbara G68 says, I think he was put there. He wouldn't walk up there in the pitch black darkness. It was storming. There was no moon. I don't think he had a flashlight. He didn't. It was light. If it was light, he might have slept on the rocks, but I don't think so. They better be sure if there was any footprints around. Well, it was years later that Chance was found, so I don't think footprints were going to be there. This is the frustrating thing. Something may have happened there that we could have figured out, 6 years ago when Chance disappeared, right? There could have been footprints. There could have been signs of a struggle. There could have been a lot of physical evidence that 6 years in the outdoors would wash away, and it would just no longer be found. So, yeah, look, I'm not, I don't want to repeat myself, but yes, it seems very odd that Chance would have found his way there on his own. It seems like his phone was no longer working by the time he would have taken this walk. We know that from the data that we were able to see from the phone. So that would have been the only access to a flashlight that Chance had at the time, is his phone flashlight, which, let's be honest, outdoors in a rainstorm isn't going to do you much good anyway. So how do you take this walk in the dark in the storm with no light and no phone? Make it make sense. That's all I can say. I'm open-minded. I'm open to hearing a reason why. I just haven't seen it yet.
So, in the interest of fairness, even though, as I said, there's a big ratio as far as like people who are believing what the authorities are saying and people who still have questions. And the ratio is obviously in favor of the people who are saying like, "Hey, this still seems like foul play. We're not accepting this." So I'm going to read a little thread that we got that sort of speaks to the other side of things. So Jan Meldoon says, anyone in a normal state of mind, as you put it, wouldn't decide they're going to walk to Torrington in the dark. But that's what Chance told his friend he was going to do. Apparently, he wasn't thinking rationally at all, so he may have made some really poor decisions. Philip Kirby 271 says, exactly. Why can't people accept this? And Womp Womp 1473 replies, no, for real though, I don't understand why people want it to be foul play so badly. It makes zero sense for someone to place a body there.
Thank you guys for commenting this. I completely understand where you're coming from, but I do think I can answer for some of it, right? So, a normal state of mind, right? Jen is quoting us from the last video when I think it was me that said he was in a relatively normal state of mind. Yeah, I think that he was, to be honest with you. He had been drinking earlier that day, but it had been many hours since he had his last drink. He had been walking. He had been really angry earlier, but again, it had been hours of him walking. He had spoken to people on the phone. He didn't sound intoxicated or out of his mind. He sounded like a guy who wanted a ride, which is the next part here. You said uh, or Jan said rather, that Chance told his friends he was going to walk home. I think he made some comments to people that day about it in anger. I don't think he was really that serious about it. He called his friend and asked for a ride. We spoke to his friend, actually, Matt, off the record, not on this channel, but off the record. We spoke to this man on the phone, and he told us directly, yeah, Chance called me and he was trying to figure out how to get home. He wanted me to come out there and pick him up. The conversation was not, hey, I'm letting you know that I'm going to walk miles and miles and miles through this rainstorm. It's that I'm currently walking outside and it's storming and I need a ride. I want to go home, right? That's where he was at. So I think that all things being relative, he was in a normal state of mind. He wasn't in a fugue state. He wasn't on drugs. He didn't have a psychotic break, and he wasn't hammered out of his mind, right? I think he was upset and he was trying to figure out how to get home, which is why I think that this decision, if he made it, to go to that national park and hike up that bluff doesn't make sense to me, knowing what I know of where Chance was at, right?
You know, I agree. I mean, look, I'm going to read another comment, and this is actually, we usually don't do this, but we got so many comments on Facebook and Instagram that I want to read this one chain that we have from Facebook. So Thomas Curry, and Thomas, thank you for following us and getting involved in the conversation. Thomas says they need to look for a broken whiskey bottle along the trail. The guy was cowboy drunk. It wasn't murder. Eileen Emma McConna, sorry, I'm reading this right off the chat, says, really? And you know he was cowboy drunk? How? And then Thomas Curry says, let's see. He just got into it with the in-laws. He was already drunk, pissed off, and walking through a town that serves alcohol on every corner on the way to Cheyenne, and a text that didn't make no sense. I'd say it's an excellent chance, considering I've seen several photos of him drinking as well. Thomas, I don't think you mean you saw photos of him drinking that day. I think you mean just in general that there's photos out there of Chance enjoying a beer here and there. I mean, look, this is the other side of the argument, right? A lot of people are sort of pointing to this idea that Chance was inebriated and enraged from this series of fights that he had had first with Bailey's family and at the golf course, and then that continuation with Bailey during the car ride, and then walking off, and that he was all worked up. But I keep going back to what we learned from Ryan, and it's just how long that walk took, how much ground Chance covered walking through that town, the stops that he made, the people that he met along the way, the conversations that he had with the convenience clerk, his state of mind according to that person, the conversation that we had with Matt, where Matt told us how Chance sounded on the phone. He didn't say like, yeah, he was out of control. He said, they would fight now and then. It was a fiery relationship, and he asked me if I could come and pick him up. It wasn't really more than that. So my feeling has always been, after the conversations that we've had with people who have been looking at this case and directly involved with this case, after doing all of that and spending time with it, what I've walked away with is that Chance was kind of sobered up. He had gotten himself tobacco, he had gotten himself an energy drink, and he was figuring things out. I don't think that he was in any way looking to harm himself or unaware of what he was capable of, which is kind of like what some of this sounds like, that like he got himself in a situation that he couldn't handle. And the other side of that, which a lot of people pointed out, is that this is a guy who really knew how to handle himself in the outdoors. He'd grown up in a rural area, and he wouldn't have done something like that. Sorry, Thomas, there's no bottle. I mean, first of all, obviously it's too much time has passed. The bottle would obviously be gone, but there's no bottle. Like we have the video. Like he's not swilling Jack Daniels walking down the street. He's looking at his phone.
Yeah.
It's not there. you
He had
know?
a Monster Energy drink. We know what he was drinking,
Right, because
because
we
we
know we
saw.
talked to the guy that he bought it from, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep. And he was drinking. He was not drinking alcohol. So I understand and appreciate where this is coming from. And I think the reason Miles and I are so vehement about it is because I know that we've talked to Dawn and I know that it bothers her because this is something that comes up over and over. Oh, he was just drunk. He was a drunk kid that made a mistake. He had been drinking earlier that day. This is like 9 at night when his phone goes dead. And
right.
presumably, that he's still in town when that happens. And then it would have been a long time later, that he found his way into this park and met with misfortune. And so I'm sorry, if you're golfing at noon, 1, 2, and you're having some beers, by the time midnight rolls around, you're not drunk anymore. And I know this because I drink and I golf, right? So trust me, I get it. I might be a different size person than Chance. I don't really know, the math on the blood alcohol versus the weight, whatever. But as a general rule of thumb here, give me a break, right? I don't think this guy was drunk by the time whatever happened to him happened. Maybe a very tiny bit still in his system, wearing off, how it feels when you drank earlier in the day and now it's 10 at night, like I get that, but that's not like blacked out drunk, making stupid mistakes drunk. That's a very different thing. So
Right.
yeah,
And I think it's important to note that like Dawn's even said like, Chance liked to drink. Like, Thomas, we're not saying that Chance was some teetotaling wilting flower. Like that's not what we're saying. Like he was a young guy, like, he was a rodeo guy, like he was a cowboy. He liked to have a good time and he liked to have a drink. We know that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But also, as Sean just said from his own experience, when you do drink regularly, you can, you're not if you're not keeping it going, then it's going to wear off, right? Like it's not, he was a large dude. He wasn't, if he wasn't keeping it going, then he wasn't going to still be drunk. And like we know that he stopped. We know that he bought an energy drink. We know that he bought tobacco. So it's like there's no bottle, man, because he wasn't keeping it going. He wasn't keeping the party going at that point. That's not what he was doing. And I think, yeah, like Sean said, like we're hammering this point home because it's like, we have developed this relationship with the family and they have heard the same stuff over and over again, and it's like, you know, we're not saying that maybe this didn't happen the way the authorities are saying it happened, but let's be clear about what the circumstances leading to that were, right? Like, look, if Chance was like, just like, screw it, I'm just gonna do this, like I just don't, I can't deal with this crap. I'm not going back to that house. I'm gonna find my way home. And he did it like that, like, like a determined guy who was like, I can handle it. I buy that a lot more than I would like, oh, he was hammered and he just, he stumbled up there. If he was drunk, how did he get up to that height? How did he do that? I mean, if he was wasted, a cowboy drunk, as Thomas says, how the hell did he get up there and make that fall? Because that's a hell of a climb, from what we've seen. And people have sent us video from the area. I mean, it's not it doesn't look like an easy thing to do. So what they say is pattern of blunt force trauma consistent with but not limited to a fall. I think that's the most important thing here is but not limited to a fall, right? So
Right.
yeah,
So could that be a car, right? That
right.
hit somebody with blunt force, a big truck hitting somebody head on. Maybe that looks like you fell down a cliff, right? I don't know. It's not telling us one way or the other. But because he was found at the bottom of a cliff, I think the assumption they're making is, probably a fall. But
Well,
was
it
it?
could be. I guess that's what they're saying, and so like, there's no point in looking at anything else. And I think that's the issue that everybody's having.
The last thing I guess I'll say about this whole situation before we move on to the next case's comments is that just remember, even if we can agree that Chance fell and that that's where he met his untimely end, how do we know it was an accident? How do we know he was alone? There's a lot of things about this situation that are unanswered and unproven. And that's the only reason I feel like this is an extremely unsatisfying conclusion that's being drawn here because I don't think it answers a lot of the questions that are still really important. Sure, maybe it was an accident. Maybe he fell, maybe he went out there for some really crazy reason all by himself in the middle of a rainstorm with no flashlight and no phone, not dressed for it, in a silly direction to be walking. Okay, fine. Maybe we can buy all that. And he accidentally climbed up this thing and fell. Okay, prove it. And I think we're all good here, and I think the family feels the same way. If you can prove that, you can prove that whole chain of events. Okay. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And if the family was accepting this and ready to move on and said, okay, we're good, I don't think Miles and I would be sitting here talking about it anymore, because we want these people to find peace and we want them to have some closure. This is the opposite of that, right? There's no peace and there's no closure. It feels like they're saying, hey, we found Chance. We've jumped to a conclusion about what happened to him and we're done looking into it. You're never going to find any answers or satisfaction. Good day to you, ma'am. Right? I think that's what this feels like for them. So that's the reason we're still here talking about it. If it, like I said, if it was the other way around, Miles and I would not be harping on this, but it's apparent to me that a lot of you feel the same way and have the same questions. So here we are, yet again discussing it. I don't want to feel like this is us beating a dead horse and returning to the same well over and over again. But look, man, we took on the responsibility of telling the story. We worked with the family. They placed some trust in us, and they're being abandoned right now by the authorities in this case, or it certainly feels that way. And so I don't feel like we should be abandoning them as well. I feel like if there's still concerns here and you guys are still interested and have thoughts about it, it's in the news this week. Of course, we're going to talk about it again. I know some of you are probably like, oh my God, come off of it, right? I get it. I get it. But the purpose of this channel is to continue the conversations around these cases. And look, we've got other stuff coming up, including right now, where we could talk about the Missy Bevers case and read some comments there.
Yeah, yeah, and just to sort of like put a period on what you just said, I think in the beginning we were kind of neutral and we were like, yeah, it's possible. And I know I said some stuff along those lines. I mean, look, I think it's pretty obvious that like if this is conclusive and there's been an investigation into it, we're all willing to accept that. We just want to kind of hear the details of it, right? And I don't think this is equivalent to something that just happened in the news and then everyone starts jumping in and saying, "Oh, it's not what happened." Like the authorities are lying to us. Like we're not creating some like JFK style conspiracy here. This is a case that's been being looked at for years. This is a family that's been waiting for answers for years with nothing happening, right? With all these questions, with a private investigator who's gone out and uncovered all this weird anomalies and evidence. So we're not like it's not like we just saw something happen and we were like, well, it's definitely not what they're saying, because the authorities didn't even have an answer. They're now all of a sudden there's remains and now they have the answer, right? So it's not like when as soon as Chance disappeared, there was an official line on what happened. Although they did say he probably disappeared in the storm and washed away in the river, right? That was kind of what they said. But you know what I'm saying? Like this isn't the JFK assassination. Like we're not trying to create some crazy conspiracy around something. We're saying this doesn't seem normal that you wouldn't even do a press conference. It's like the one of the biggest case that ever happened in this area, and you don't even have a press conference after you identify the remains and come out with an official cause of death, and you're like, that's it. And you send out a press release online that, that's it. That seems to be it. Like we're not hearing anything else. I mean, several people have actually commented, like, why wasn't there a live press conference? Why
Yeah.
wasn't there like why didn't someone get in front of a camera and make a statement and say this is why we came to this conclusion and these are the agencies that were involved and everybody agrees and we know that there's a lot of X, Y, and Z around this case and there's a lot of emotions, but we want everyone to just kind of like, take a breath and understand that like things don't always happen the way you think they do and whatever. I think that would go a long way. I
It
mean,
would.
call me crazy, call me some sort of normie, who would just accept that. But I think if we could see someone actually saying that and like look at their body language and understand that they were speaking the truth, that would go a long way.
Especially because there's so many questions in public, right? And you're a public servant, whether you're a police officer or an attorney general, you work for the public. And it is incumbent upon you, and there's great public concern around a case like this, to answer these questions, right? And I'm not trying to be antagonistic about it. I'm just saying, like, the lack of transparency, the lack of, like you said, not even coming out with for a 5 minute, announcement on camera You're just going to like tweet this basically. You're going to send everybody a mass email with just like a couple paragraphs of what you think happened and that's it. Leave us alone. To me, it feels more like rather than they want to put closure on this case for the public and answer questions and put it behind them, they just want this off their desk as quickly as possible so they can never think about it again. That may be true, that may not be true. That's how it feels to be on the receiving end of it. I think that's how Don feels. I think that's how a lot of you feel. I know that when I look at it, that's how it feels. I'm like, oh, these guys can't wait to get rid of this case. They never want to talk about it again. When my attitude on it is, no, you should get up in front of a bunch of reporters at a podium and take questions. Questions like, why do you believe that? Have you found any other evidence other than just where he was located to lead you to believe that this was an accident? Did you look at this? Did you look at? They should be able to answer those questions and they should be able to do it in public. We expect that of the president and his press secretary. We expect that of our congresspeople, our mayors. So I don't see why this case should be any different.
So we'll leave it at that for now. So let's get into it. These are comments on the Missy Bevers case breakdown that we put up. Veruca Salt, 1971. We haven't seen you in a while. Hi, Veruca Salt. Thanks for the comment. Yes, Bobby Wayne Henry did do security at Missy's funeral. He actually asked to work security at the funeral. That's super interesting, and would love to know where you got that info from. That's really, really interesting.
Let's look at the next one here. Noreen Gardner, 1075, says the marriage had infidelity issues, but they were both working on the marriage. This is from Brandon's interviews. For a woman to be targeted this viciously with an elaborate costume to make their identity obscure in view of cameras, this is personal. It's a lot like Liz's case. The murderer in her case also confronts her before they killed her. Yeah, so I pulled this one actually because of the marriage infidelity stuff. We had said in our breakdown that we were not able to confirm that Missy was having an affair. If Brandon said this in some interview, I haven't seen it, so it may be that he confirmed it, and that's fine. But we had not seen that, and I still haven't seen it. And the thing is, with a victim in a case, if it's just kind of rumored or alleged, but we don't know for sure, I'd rather lean on the side of not just saying, "Oh, Missy was cheating on her husband," right? If there's a chance it's not true. We did another dive trying to find this stuff, and all the like formal news articles from like CBS and stuff that we could find still use the word allegedly around this affair. So whether or not there was affairs and infidelity going on in Missy's marriage, I don't know. It does seem like it would be really important to figuring this out, but I have not been able to find out, if it's true 100%, and if so, with who, right? If the police know more about this, they haven't made it public and they haven't named any names, and so it makes it a little tricky for us to talk about. But it would make sense from a motive angle, right? I think if that's part of the story here, it's obviously, potentially really significant.
Yeah, yeah. It's just we don't want to say anything's for sure if we haven't been able to find, concrete evidence. I think it's safe to assume that, you know, people were at least talking to people and, there was something going on, but as far as her having like specific affairs, I don't have any evidence of that.
Yeah. We'd like to know more. Let's put that one in the we would like to know more about this file for the Missy Bevers case.
Yeah.
You want to read Chino? It's our buddy
Yeah,
Chino.
Chino's back, huh? Chino Smith, E9. Hey guys, great intro for this case. Thank you, Chino. I do have a question. I'd come across a video with a guy named D. Derelek, a biker with a gait and some pretty gory drawings with someone getting stabbed through the eye. Not saying that happened to Missy, but was wondering if this name has come up for you two. Thank you. It has not. I've not heard that name before, Sean. Have you?
No, but that sounds like a very ripe thing to get into in our forthcoming possible suspects video. We'll take a look at it, Chino. Thanks for the tip. That sounds obviously intriguing.
Yeah, and just a reminder, guys, we have the interview with the True Crime Broads, and then we're also doing a suspect breakdown for this one because there are a lot of really interesting people who are being looked at, or were looked at, I should say, and since the case is still open, or still potential suspects, because everybody is a suspect, as we know, until the case is solved. Um, okay, so this is along the same lines, and maybe we should have said it earlier, but Ogford P. Doggy says it was confirmed Missy was having an affair with two other men. And then I think there's a gas leak. Our old friend, my favorite screen name, said, "Who confirmed this information?" George Evans 1149 says, "I heard the same thing from other podcasts." So again, this isn't necessarily coming from the police. This isn't necessarily coming from the investigators. Perhaps it's a conversation that Brandon had on a podcast interview. I don't know. Or maybe it's just people talking about the info that we were able to find out, which is like alleged. Everything says alleged from the official sources. So
Yeah, and I think we're kind of taking our lead from the video that you guys are going to see this week, which is our interview with the true crime broads who have covered this story. Extensive is underselling it. I mean, like hundreds of episodes of a podcast, many of them looking at Missy's case. And even they said in our interview with them, like, yeah, it's alleged, but no one really knows the truth for sure about whether or not Missy was cheating, and if so, with who. It's like, so as far as the public or like people like Miles and I are concerned or can tell, it is a very prominent rumor in this case, but I just don't know the truth of it. Sure, it could have happened. I mean, that happens, right? Especially in murder cases, you often dig up, affairs and things like that. But it's just, this is one of those cases, I guess I'll say, where there's a lot being held back by the investigators. Like, I think there's stuff that they know about what took place at the actual murder scene in the room where Missy was killed that they have not released. Things have leaked out over the years. You'll hear more about that again in our interview with the True Crime Broads. Things have leaked out that are really significant about what they found there, but are things that the police never intended to tell the public. They just came out and they later had to acknowledge, yes, that was true. Without spoiling what it is, just stay tuned and you'll find out. Um, but yeah, this could be one of them, right? They may know everything about this affair. They may have dug up every text and email and have footage of Missy meeting some guy at a motel. We don't know. They could have it and they just haven't said anything. So, but without knowing it for sure, it's like it's hard for us to talk about without adding to the rumor mill and like injecting more disinformation and wrong facts into the case. And we really try not to do that. It's hard to have a perfectly clean track record when you're talking about cases every single week. And sometimes your information might be a little bad or whatever. But if we know that it's going to be vague or ambiguous, we don't want to go there. I hope that makes sense to you guys.
yeah, makes sense to me. Listen, guys, again, thank you so much for helping us this week. It was a really, really good week for the podcast, for the platform, whatever you want to call what we're doing. Just an overwhelming amount of support and comments and likes and subscriptions that we've gotten, and we really, really appreciate it. So, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, keep giving you guys more information. As I said, this week, this Friday, we have the True Crime Broads coming on to talk about the Missy Bevers case, and we've got a bunch of really great stuff programmed till the end of the year. Um, Please remember, if you like what we're doing, drop us a comment, give us a like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. Also, remember, we are on all podcast platforms now. So that means Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, look us up, True Crime Unsolved. You're going to find us. Everything's there, all of our major videos. We're not putting the comment reaction videos, we're keeping those on YouTube. That's like a YouTube exclusive for now, but everything else is going to be on there. So you want to listen to these cases, you want to go back and hear some of these interviews and reanalyze some of this stuff. Say you're scratching your head about what the information that's come out about Chance, and you want to go back and listen to Dawn's interview. It's there. You can listen to it whenever you want. You want to listen to the interview with Ryan Couch, the private investigator. It's there. You can listen to it whenever you want.
Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate the comments. I love the back and forth with the different theories. It's even when everybody doesn't agree with each other on what happened. It's interesting to see the dialogue, and we appreciate you guys stopping by and leaving your thoughts. And we're happy to engage with it.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.